It's time now for the news review of this bulletin. The U.S. military says that a rocket attack has hit one of its bases in northeast Syria. The military's Central Command says the attack on Ramallah's landing zone caused no injuries or damage. According to CENTCOM, the military has found the launch site, but it's not clear who fired the rockets. The U.S. keeps several outposts in Syria, mainly in the country's oil-rich east. The bases have come under rocket attacks several times in recent months. Washington claims the military presence is aimed at preventing a resurgence of Daesh terrorists, but Syria sees the deployments as illegal and a pretext to steal its oil. Mohammed Ali is our correspondent joining us from Damascus to give us the latest on this. We also have Marcus Papadopoulos, historian, political analyst, and author, joining us from London for an analysis. Welcome to you both. Mohammed Ali, let me first start with you regarding this latest attack that CENTCOM says had targeted the U.S. forces and its partners in the region. Tell us more, the latest that you have on this.
Yes, what we know is that it has been confirmed, this attack by the U.S. itself, that there has been a rocket attack on a U.S. base in the northeast of Syria, particularly in the area of Al-Rmaylan. According to the U.S., a 107-millimeter rocket targeted that U.S. base, but caused no damage and no one was injured as a result. Definitely, this is not the first kind of attack on U.S. bases inside Syria. There has been no claim of responsibility for this particular attack. The Syrian government did not respond yet officially in any statement on this particular attack also. However, what is important to say is that such attacks on U.S. bases inside Syria is definitely seen as an expression of rejection of the presence of the United States, the illegal, of course, presence for the United States inside Syria, which aims only to divide the country, support so-called Syria's Democratic Forces, a separatist group, and loot Syria's resources.
Marcus Papadopoulos, taking a look at the situation as a whole, we know that the U.S. is there illegally, not by the invitation of the Syrian government, so that in itself causes instability. I'm sure the U.S. realizes that their presence does cause instability, but they also have their motives and their reasons for being there, which they've said is for the oil. How do you assess that after a few years now where the ultimate reason they've given is to fight the Daesh terrorists, but yet they're still there?
What an extraordinarily perverse grievance the Americans have. The United States of America, which is the principal violator in the world of international law and the United Nations Charter, and which is illegally inside Syria and illegally occupying a part of Syria, not to mention is stealing Syrian oil on a daily basis, now complains that its military forces in Syria have come under attack, possibly from the Syrian army. That is a repulsive act of invasion. It is akin to a burglar breaking into a home, taking possession of that home from the family who live there, and then stealing from the family who live there, and then complaining that the family have fought back. The Americans are in Syria, firstly, to weaken the Syrian government, secondly, to strengthen the overall American presence in West Asia, and thirdly, to hope that one day the American presence, illegal presence in northeast Syria will be enough to support another terrorist uprising against the Syrian government. But the list of cases of American criminality is eternal. Let it be known that the Americans tore away from Serbia the medieval Serbian province of Kosovo and Metohija and made it an independent state by engineering a vote in the so-called House of, in the so-called Assembly of Kosovo. And let it also be known that the Americans permit their staunch strategic friend and ally, Turkey, to illegally occupy the north of Cyprus, even though the Turks committed ethnic cleansing there. The Americans do not have a political, legal, or moral case to justify their presence in Syria and to defend their forces from having come under attack, possibly from the Syrian army.
Sure. Muhammad Ali, I'm curious, again, referring or reflecting on the statements coming from CENTCOM, they said that they found the launch site and they found some of the ammunition that was left behind, but there was no indications that they gave as to whom it belongs to. Does it still remain that way, that they don't know who is behind this, or they haven't released that information maybe?
Well, so far, no further information were released. They still don't know who is behind such an attack. But if you ask Syrians on the ground, they'll tell you that this is a local resistance, kind of local resistance from the people of that area, sending messages to the US that they are not welcome on Syrian territories because of their destructive role, because of that they are here illegally, because there are no benefits for the Syrians from the US presence inside Syria. We all remember that hundreds of civilians have been killed in the so-called US-led coalition airstrikes on Syria since the US-led coalition started its airstrikes on Syria and Iraq, of course, in Deir el-Zor, in areas previously in Al-Raqqa and the countryside of those two governorates. So the Syrians do not want the United States to be present inside Syria, and this is their message every time they're attacking the US bases inside Syria. Now, in the past couple of months, such attacks increased, which is also another indication that the locals there do not want that US illegal presence. And we have to also note that in previous statements by Syrian officials, they always reiterate, especially military statements, that the Syrian government and the Syrian army is determined to liberate every inch of Syrian territory, whether it's from the terrorists or from the Western, of course, forces like the United States, like Turkey. And we have been seeing that gradually happening on the ground. The Syrian government is in control of most parts of the country. It is defeating terrorism step by step, area after area. And now we're seeing that there are some kind of negotiations and talks between the Syrian side and the Turkish side, which means that when those are successful, all eyes will be on that part of Syria, the northeast, how to get rid of the Americans and how to liberate that part of Syria.
Well, I mean, this is what's, I'm not too sure what word to use. Maybe you can help us out here, Marcus. When you have the U.S. illegally in Syria, stealing the oil, and at the same time to have imposed the strictest of sanctions, the harshest of sanctions by the name of Caesar's Act, not to allow Syria to even be able to rebuild its country, that just defies any sense of humanitarianism. How can the U.S. get away with that in the international arena?
Well, you ask me for a word to describe that, and the word I offer to you is fiendish. It is absolutely sickening that the Americans are illegally inside Syria and at the same time are sanctioning the Syrian government and effectively sanctioning the Syrian people, whilst at the same time stealing from Syria, stealing from the Syrian people a natural resource of Syria's, namely oil. But then the Americans are a superpower, and as a result of that, in America's eyes, or let's be precise, in the eyes of the federal government of America, might is right. The Americans discard morality, they discard ethics, they discard honesty, they discard the United Nations Charter, and they discard international law in general, all in pursuit of defending and strengthening Pax Americana. That is the simple reality about America. But as we know, the world is changing. The world is moving to a multipolar world, and there is nothing that Washington, the American empire, can do about that.
Thank you very much for that, Marcus Papadopoulos. historian, political analyst, and author there from London. Mohammed Ali, thank you so much. Our correspondent there from Damascus. Pleasure. And with that, we come to an end for this news review.